Welcome back to Aces High Gamers, everyone. Today's guest on the channel is Chris Mango, solo indie developer, who agreed to come on board to talk about his game, to which I was one of the privileged few that had the opportunity to beta test this game. It's called Mango Mischief. Check it out next. Well, Chris, thank you for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. Good to get to know the man behind the game that I've been playing over was it 16 streams I think I did.
Yeah, I think so, something like that. And thank you for
Mhm.
having me. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. So introduce yourself and your game.
My name's Chris Mango. I am a high school math teacher and math tutor from New Jersey. And I'm also the solo game developer of Mango Mischief, which is kind of a retro style satirical RPG or JRPG, kind of a throwback to kind of the games I played growing up. Things like Chrono Trigger, the Final Fantasy games, the Dragon Warrior slash Dragon Quest games, Golden Sun, like those types of genres.
All great games. Fellow New Jerseyan too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what originally led you into game development?
Um, the past 30 years of playing games, for lack of a better thing. Um, for as I played more and more games growing up and thinking and reflecting more about the games I liked and didn't like and trying to figure out what I liked about the games and what I would improve if one day I could actually make my game. Um,
Mm,
kind of the logical transition was, would I ever actually hypothetically be able to create a game? And I have no background in computer science. I don't know how to program. I don't know how to do any of those um, uh, mechanics that I assumed were required. And then a few years ago, I started just kind of Googling and YouTubing, are there any game engines that are completely noob friendly for someone who doesn't know how to code or anything of that nature? And I stumbled across a few different game engines, and I particularly liked RPG Maker, especially the MV version. And it gave me access to something that I never thought I'd be able to have access to, which is really interesting.
what stood out about MV versus the other versions of RPG Maker?
So at the time, Envy was the newest edition. Since then, MZ has come out, but MV was the newest edition, and the community, the RPG Maker forum community, had so many assets and plugins and just quality of life improvements where the game developers who knew much more than I did had spent. I don't remember how long MV had been out at the time, 5, 6, 7 years. They spent lots and lots of time really answering all the possible questions that devs seem to have. Is there a way to make this happen? In the default engine, no, but then some awesome programmer came along and created a plugin for it. And so, as I was tinkering with the different options, as I was looking through the other RPG Maker versions, MV just seemed to be the most user friendly, and it coincided with what my vision of Mango Mischief was in terms of the things I knew that I would need to have exist inside the game engine. That way I could program it the way I wanted it to.
Okay. Speaking on the development, like take me through your journey through development. Like, like how you got started and what were some of your influences. Like I know you mentioned Golden Sun and some other games that you've played, but is there any like direct influences that went into your game? Start from there.
Great. So the first thing I did is watch weeks of tutorials on YouTube. There were a couple RPG Maker amazing game devs who knew their stuff, and one of the YouTube people who I watched, his name was like, I think it's some random dude, but there's no vowels at all, so it's like SMRND, and
Clever name.
yeah, and he just had like step by step, like assuming you know nothing, like this is like where to click, where to go if you're looking for these things. And it was just like 20, 30, 40 of those videos, and I would just keep branching off into other videos. I'd look at different plugins and ways to do certain things in the game. So there's Janfly, who's really, really amazing at making plugins, and uh, just learning and digesting as much as possible, being a regular on the RPG Maker forum, just asking a lot of stupid questions to people who knew way more than I did. So it was for me, it was the willingness to get out there and be like, look, I'm more than humble. I don't know what I'm doing. Here's a question, and everyone is super super welcoming and inclusive. which was nice because I wasn't sure if there's going to be any sort of gatekeeping because I don't
Right.
have a background in really anything relevant. Um, but everyone is extremely helpful, and they taught me a lot. As far as um, inspirations go, I mean, those JRPGs growing up were really incredible. Um, a f- Maybe 2 years before I started working on Mango Mischief, so maybe like 2018, I played Undertale for like the first time, um,
Okay.
which is an incredible game that really turns RPGs on their heads. Lots of fourth wall breaks, lots of satire and comedy, which is great. Um, so any game that includes a good amount of humor, a good amount of fourth wall breaks, I'm always interested in those. Famous satirists and comedians, Jonathan Swift, Mel Brooks, Jon Stewart, George
I love
Carlin,
Mel Brooks,
right?
George Carlin. Yeah.
Yeah, all the movies. Yeah, I mean, especially if you can include, you know, I guess whether it's political satire or points of substance, like it's fantastic to educate. Like as an educator, I appreciate that. But if you can, make someone laugh in the process or make someone laugh at themselves while realizing a hard truth or something, I found those sorts of approaches to be particularly interesting and influential. Um, so I thought it'd be a really fun challenge to kind of poke fun at one of my favorite genres of games growing up because once in a while there are lazy tropes. There are cliches that you just kind of take for granted because it's a
Yep.
JRPG and you're like, all right, well, we know this doesn't make any sense, but you know how it's done. It's a Japanese role playing game, and this is what they always do. So you just take it for granted. Um, and uh, I wanted to I wanted to attempt to balance between still having a good solid JRPG um, while also kind of calling out kind of the overused lines in the game as well.
Right. Um, I'll touch on some of that in a little bit. Why did you decide on an RPG versus, let's say, an action game or a platformer or something? Like, is it just because of what the story, how you wanted to be involved with, like the storytelling of it, or is it just because you're a big fan of RPGs? You're like, that's what I want to make.
Yeah, so I think my two favorite genres growing up were JRPGs and platformers, like the N64 and Super Nintendo collectathon platformer games like Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, all of those. Um,
Okay.
since I wanted to do an actual legitimate story with dialogue, I found the JRPG genre to lend itself more nicely to actually having storylines and dialogues where I could actually have characters with personalities. When I think back to a lot of my platformer games that I loved, they weren't really dialogue heavy. There wasn't really too many opportunities for fourth wall breaks, although Banjo Kazooie is a notable exception because
Yeah.
Rare was just an awesome company that just, with Conker's Bad Fur Day and Banjo Kazooie, they had no problem poking fun at those things. Um, but I think I just thought more critically about the things that I like and dislike from RPGs in general. And given that the game engine that I found to be most user friendly was literally RPG Maker MV. It kind
Hmm.
of helped direct me towards, yeah, I'm gonna end up doing an RPG. This kind of lines up nicely with the fact that I want to do some story. I want to be able to write dialogue either on signposts or having the cutscenes and whatnot. So I think kind of everything lined up to point me in the direction of JRPGs. And also, I'm not really sure of this, but I'd imagine that maybe creating a platformer with smooth animations and movement might be a little bit harder from the programming side. And
Okay.
and given that that was probably my biggest hurdle, given that I didn't have any experience with that, it kind of was like the fourth or fifth reason why I probably felt more comfortable creating a JRPG rather than a platformer.
Okay. Now, I know you were talking about how you like the satirical and the comedy side. What drew you to making a game with a satirical story versus actually taking a more serious and grounded route? Was it just personal preference because you wanted to make a comedy and make fun of RPGs and tropes while we're literally playing the game, or was there something a little bit more there?
It was definitely a big part of it. I think the other thing might just be the the humility I was trying to bring in to the game itself, because having never developed a game before, I was not I was not so egotistical as to, assume that I could create, an amazing, hardcore, legitimate JRPG experience to rival the other greats or anything of that nature. And so I think that
Okay.
adding in comedy was my way of being more comfortable with the creation process. I don't know if it's a little bit of a qualifier or hedging my bets a little bit. But I always like trying to inject a little bit of humor and my personality in it as well. And
Okay.
if it's going to be my own creation, um, I think that that funny, more lighthearted side is something I was trying to bring into the game, as opposed to the game taking itself super seriously. Um, because you know, even though some of the games I played growing up were more serious JRPGs, my memories of playing them were more lighthearted memories and kind of the joy I got, and those types of aspects. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring into it too.
Okay. When I was playing through the game, there definitely is a really good story there too. It was just it took some time to get there, and the mystery behind it, and getting towards the end of the game and seeing everything wrap up, and that light bulb clicking in my head, and it's like, wow, and that kind of creates that will create a lasting memory. It has created a lasting memory in my mind, and I'm sure it will with other future gamers. And running along into that, where did you actually come up with the name Mango Mischief? Besides the fact that your last name is Mango, and the reason why I say that is because playing the game, the characters themselves don't really get into too much mischief. The mischief is more on the outside from the player's perspective, seeing the fourth wall break, seeing the comedy, seeing the characters being a little bit more self-aware, or them turning and looking at the camera when they're facing another direction and being like, "Oh, hey, we're looking at you, gamer." Besides the fact that that injects a little bit of your comical personality. So yeah, where so start off with the name.
Yeah, so the name itself is a little bit of a fourth wall break too, because it's for exactly those reasons. How I I despise too many fetch quests, and so anytime there was time to give someone a mango and having to go back to the mango tree or whatever, just kind of calling out that
Mhm.
nonsense. Um, Obviously, as you know, I like alliteration and wordplay in my game. I like to have as many
Yeah.
puns and those things as possible.
Mhm.
Um, and Yeah, I liked Mango Madness, but that's a Snapple, and I didn't want to worry about any
Yeah.
copyright issues. Um, yeah, so I went with Mango Mischief. A fun N64 game growing up was Mischief Makers. Um, and so I just like the MM combination, and yeah, it's mostly a nod to the satire and the comedy from the developer side, because at the same time, when I was first creating the game, I wasn't ever intending on selling the game to anybody. Like, it was always just a passion project for myself.
Okay.
Like, I don't have a bucket list, but if I did, making my own video game would be somewhere on there. So I was totally fine with the intrinsic motivation of making a game that I was really, really proud of, which, based on my experience, seems to be a good place to start when creating a game. Um, Speaking to Now that I've gotten to speak to a lot of game developers who do this for a living, um, they find that if the passion's not there and they're just worried about is this going to make enough money, that can be really really hard to get a project done, um, or to be happy with what they're doing. And so my intentions were to just make a game that I really like. But then as I talked about the game I'm making with more people, moving from family to friends to other people who play RPGs on the internet just casually, people started asking like, "Hey, that sounds like a really cool game. Like, when can I play it?" Or like, "Where can I find the game?" Or "How much does it cost?" And like all of these questions, and I kind of ran out of reasons to say I'm not selling it. Um, and then like what clinched it was like the Kickstarter, where dozens of random strangers gave me like more than twice as much money that I asked for, which was really really interesting. So I made like some social media accounts. I made a Twitter and Instagram based on Mango Mischief, and I didn't have those social media presences before that, and people became legitimately excited and supportive for the game. So I'm like, wow, that's really, really interesting and humbling. And hey, if 10 people play the game, if 20, I don't know how many people are going to play the game, but it's cool that other people are excited about the game that I'm making just based off of the pictures and the videos and the interviews I've been doing. Um, so that was my whole kind of process there, transitioning from like the original intent of like I just want to make a game I'm really, really proud of to I guess other people kind of want to play the game that I'm still really, really proud of.
That's great. Did you ever think in a million years that you would get the following that you've gotten now? Because I think your Twitter is now hitting over 3,000 subscribers, and like you just started posting on YouTube, and you're already up to like 66 in just a couple of weeks, and it's like growing exponentially. I mean, your Twitter is growing. Like, did you ever think that it would reach this kind of level, and how does it feel to actually get to that point?
I had no idea that it was going to reach this, and I also still don't know if this is a good level. Like based on what other people are saying, they're like, "You must be really proud," and I'm like, "I, I guess so."
You don't have a
Yeah,
gauge, right? No gauge to
yeah,
judge.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you combine Twitter and Instagram, I have like 5,000 followers, and on YouTube, yeah, I have a whole bunch of people subscribed. Um, so it's I mean, it makes me feel great that people are interested in wishlisting the game and playing it as of June 20th. Um, it's been really really I don't know it's felt really fantastic, especially since I've only done the social media stuff and the Kickstarter stuff less than a year ago, which is kind of nice. Um, yeah, and I'm excited to finally get the game out there now that I'm done creating it and just working on the marketing and some other videos that I'm recording, which not even you know about yet, but they'll be out in the summer
Oh,
after release.
really?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah, I usually got a little bit of the inside, but yeah, it's even some stuff mystery to me.
trying. I'm trying. Yeah.
Interesting. So going back to development, besides the fact that you said you're not a coder and that you don't really have experience making a game, what were some of the other struggles with developing Mango Mischief?
Um. So besides the programming aspect, I think that well, I was gonna say running into problems and figuring out how to solve them, but that was kind of the fun part. Like as a math teacher, like I love problem solving, and so the creation of the game for me was super enjoyable, and that's what kept me going. The whole um, I want the transition from I wish X was in my game to oh now X is successfully in my game, and like there's 10 steps in between that was always like a
Okay.
huge was something that I was just learning. I was just constantly learning about um, a topic, a hobby, a new interesting activity that was way out of my comfort zone. So whether it was watching video tutorials, that took some time. Whether it was talking to the community, like that took some time. Still pushing myself out of my comfort zone, leaning into the discomfort of asking dumb questions and like humbling myself and being like, "Hey, does anyone know how to fix this?" That was tough, but it was also the flip side was it was very very rewarding from like an academic perspective. Um,
Okay.
Other than that, it was given that even I could see a clear improvement of the way my game is set up. Like the later stages of my game, whether it's the maps, whether it's the the creativity of what goes into later stages, comparing it to the beginning of the game, I could actually see like the progression and evolution. So I had to actually like go back and fix the beginning parts of the game to make sure that
Mhm.
it didn't really go from like low quality to high quality, that it was like high quality or in my opinion strong quality throughout. So
Right.
tinkering back and forth and making sure that there's story continuity, um, making sure um, that the beta testers, that the play testers, that you and everyone else understand what I'm trying to lead you to, that you're able to solve the puzzles, that you're not overlooking certain things that I think are obvious, but then again, I'm the one who created the game, so I know the answers
Right.
to everything. I know exactly where it's supposed to go. I know the best moves until someone speedruns my game and beats me or something. But like in theory, there's a huge difference between I made the game, so I know everything about it, and here's someone who's never played the game before, and I'm wondering like what path they end up taking. Um, so that was another really really hard thing for me to learn was how other players play my game, RPGs in general, games in general. So that's why, your contributions and Bestiaries and Reef Leaf and everyone else's play testing was super important to me because I was making that transition from, "Oh, this is a game that I'll play and I'm proud of," to, "This is a game I want other people to be able to play and enjoy also."
Yeah, it was from what I played, it was very enjoyable. There were a couple of instances where, and you've even showcased that on your YouTube, where I literally laughed out loud on stream, and like to have those moments, they again, like I was saying, they stick with you, and then like the different references that you put in, and like you were talking about how you had to go back to the beginning of the game during development, because I played your second build, and then I played the final build, and even I was noticing the transitions in the early parts that weren't there. Like even the starting area was a little confusing to navigate, and then when I played the final version, it's like, oh, he went back to the beginning and fixed these portions. And it's continuing on with the beta testers. Like, how beneficial was it to have players like myself, Bestiary, Leaf? How beneficial was it to have us on board testing the game? And was it actually difficult to, like, I know you had reached out to me personally out on Twitter. How difficult was it to get some of these other testers? And did you even think you were going to be able to get any kind of outside testers? That like you, because you said you had some other people. I think you mentioned your brothers had tested your game prior to me and the other guys coming on board.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all the feedback I got from all of you was invaluable. My game is a million times better than it was beforehand. Um, I mean, there were a lot of small little tweaks, like when you would bring up like, "Oh, this attack animation's kind of dragging a little bit," so all right, we speed it up. Like
Mhm.
those are really small quality of life changes, but there were other huge ones that other people made. I mean, one of my first beta testers, my friend Artem, was like, "You should probably make a journal to log all of your quests, because if someone doesn't play your game for like a week or two, they might not know where they're going." And when I play like this is Artem speaking, like when I play RPGs and I put it down for a while, and if there isn't a very easy way for me to get back into it to kind of be reminded on where I should be going next, it's hard for me to get back into the game. And that was something that is hugely impactful in the game. And I've since made even more journal improvements since you've seen it last. Um,
Oh, okay.
but like logging in the quests, the main quests, the side quests, the tutorials, that was something I never really thought to do when I was just making the game for myself because I'm making the game. I don't need reminders of what's happening. But as soon
Right.
as another person plays it, having all the information logged in on what quests are left, what quests are completed, um, these are just things that obviously make sense in retrospect, but given that it was my first time, um, it was extremely helpful to see how other people play the game and what other people value. Because what other players value might not have been what I would have guessed, but that's why you have as large a sample size as possible. Um, some of my playtesters played the game for a couple hours and they were like, "This is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it, but I am rotating through other games. So, here's like my 2, 3 hours for like my first impressions." And then other playtesters, like you, played the whole thing. I mean, 20, 30, 40 hours. I think Reefly's gonna finish next week and log in like a total of 30 hours. I think Bestiary had 35, 40. I think you had less. You were in the 20s, I think.
Yeah, I was a little bit quicker than most. I think I hit 26 and change. I think Bestie actually broke the 40-hour mark.
Yeah. So
He was taking his time though.
yeah,
But
yeah,
again,
dozens of
that's
hours, which is kind of cool.
yeah.
Yeah, my brothers gave me really good feedback. Because they've, we all played games growing up, so I value their feedback a lot as well. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so everything was extremely helpful, and I was just grateful for anyone playing any number of minutes or hours of my game. So whether they're playing for an hour or 40 hours, I will eagerly eat up any feedback that I get, even if it was a first impression. Because maybe if they're only playing for an hour or two, there was a reason why they weren't playing for another 2 hours, and so hopefully I can improve on that. So I'll still pick their
Right.
brains just as much as picking the brains of someone who played for 30, 40. Um,
Mm.
and the fact that I was able to watch everyone's VODs. Like I've watched easily over 100 hours of other people playing my game. which was great. Like I've taken notes. I had like Microsoft Word documents and spreadsheets, and just coming up with like, all right, well, two or three people said this, so obviously I'm going to take it seriously when one person says it. But if two or three people are saying it, like, what's the next level? Because something has to change here. And can I change it in such a way that it doesn't really compromise like the spirit of what I was trying to get out of the game, which was really nice because I got so much feedback and I didn't feel offended by the feedback. And there was so much good, useful information that I could take and combine with what my idea of the game was, what my original intent and the identity was, that I didn't really feel like the game ended up being something completely different. And now I'm no longer happy with the game because I had to sacrifice and compromise so much just to appease beta. Like, none of that is how I was feeling about it. Um, so, yeah, so everything was super helpful.
Great. Now, going back onto what you were just saying about, appeasing or anything like that. Was there anything in the game that you would have liked to add in that you didn't have time to, or was there anything um, that was cut that you would want to put back in? Is there anything that you wish you had done differently in the final version of your game?
Um, so a lot of times I'll kind of play that game in my mind where I'll come up with something and then I'll realize that I had like a justification for keeping it the way it was anyway. Kind of like a
Hmm.
rat, like I don't know, an angel and a devil on my shoulder or something. So for example, you know, if I, there might have been ways to kind of speed up the early game, which was more linear, because
Hmm.
after finishing the game, I realized I really valued the non-linear aspects, which is like the mid and late game. The majority of the game is non-linear, but
Yeah.
the beginning part is linear, and it's in retrospect maybe a little bit slower than I would have liked. But then at the same time, like the intention of the game was to kind of scaffold and lead the player to, you know, start off with some training wheels, like understand like this is how the game mechanics work, this is how like the class system works, and then we take the training wheels off, and then you're off to go on the linear setup too. So I on one hand, there are some things I might want to tweak, but on the other hand, I do remember that I I made those conscious decisions for certain reasons. And so at that point a lot of it's just subjective. Like there's a million different class systems and way to customize your characters across all the JRPGs, and I chose certain things to do and certain things not to do. So it's a matter of, you know, the subjectivity and the taking chances and trying to tinker with some new options as well. I didn't want to just necessarily lean back on something that maybe one of my favorite games already did. I wanted to try to tweak it in some way. Um, and so, yeah, I'm sure I could make a in another alternate universe another Mango Mischief where the class system is different, or another Mango Mischief where the items work a little bit differently, or the non-linear transitioning or the linear transitioning to non-linear is done a little bit different, or the characters have slightly different personalities. Um,
Hmm.
but I remember making conscious decisions for everything each step of the way, and so overall, I feel pretty good about those decisions I made.
The overall scope of the game.
Yeah,
Actually, I want to go back to the beta testers real quick. I just thought of something that wasn't actually on the list of questions, but how was it? How interesting was it to see that we briefly talked about it? In one of my streams and off camera, to see how different everybody played your game versus when they get to the nonlinear section, what roads they decided to take on the order of the dungeons, the class skills, weapon choices, this, that, and the other. Like, how was it to see how differently everybody played your game versus what you were originally expecting?
it was very exciting to see, and it gave me even more feedback than I think a lot of you even realize, because you were very good at verbalizing what you're wondering in that moment, what your decisions are. Um, but even
Yeah, I tried to
still,
be very vocal.
yes, and you were probably one of the most vocal. And even with all that, 95% of the feedback I got from your VODs or from watching you live um, was the things that you were unconsciously doing. The
Mhm.
things that you weren't even aware or that you at least weren't saying. Which
Like
is why it was so,
autopilot.
yeah, yeah, the autopilot, the thing like, all right, well, maybe there's just a battle where you're just spamming attack, attack, attack. So I'm like, okay, so he doesn't. excuse me, doesn't feel like he needs to use magic. He doesn't need to use any skills for this. So that gives me some sort of information. Is there something
Mm,
I need to look at with balancing? Are the skills in the right order? So like I'm trying to go like 2 or 3 or 4 levels deep into why you're making certain choices. And there were certainly times when I would message you afterwards and be like, hey, out of curiosity, I saw X, what made you do X as opposed to Y? So we got to have that dialogue also. Um, but seeing everyone go through different paths was very very helpful. Seeing people approach the battles differently and what their quests were was very very helpful. Seeing you, so this is tied to your question, I promise, but I want to
go
get
ahead.
this in
No,
here
no,
because it
go
just
ahead.
reminded me. Up until, well, maybe for the first, I don't know, 8. So I made Mango Mischief in 2 years, and so for the first year and a half, um, anytime Mango Mischief was being talked about, it would be me talking to a family member, my wife, my friend. Um, and so I slowly saw this transition around like 18 months in where it moved from every conversation about Mango Mischief, including me, to seeing someone streaming my game, having someone else in the chat who also plays my game, like start talking with each other and strategizing about my game when I wasn't included. So like there'd be
Hmm.
times when like Bestiary would come in your chat or you'd watch him play my game, be like, "Oh, so you're there? Like what'd you do for this thing?" What and seeing that was probably one of like my favorite moments in the game dev process, getting to see other people strategizing about the game I made without me leading any sort of discussion. Like I might not have even been watching live, but I see you and other people kind of theory crafting about what the best way to do this is, or have you been using this skill, or just other you know questions regarding spoilers or regarding how you're approaching a certain aspect. um, that was really cool to see it, like where now it's kind of this becoming fully grown kind of autonomous being where I don't need to be the one who starts a conversation about Mango Mischief, but like two other people who are playing my game are talking about it. And that was definitely one of my proudest moments, I think. Seeing other people talk about the game that I was not like puppeteering behind the scenes or anything.
Yeah, well, first I was actually able to meet some great streamers through your game. And now, we all follow each other. We do raids, we talk, and it was fun hopping into some of the other chats, especially Bestiary and Leaf, simply because of the fact that I was further than them. So
Mhm.
I actually got to take a little bit of a perspective from you. Because when you're watching us play, you're like, oh, they're getting to that part. It's like I felt like I was in your shoes at a couple of moments. It's like, oh, he's going to get to that part, and I know it's going to screw him up, or I know he's going to go through some challenges. And it felt really good to watch the reactions and see the different perspective from the other streamers versus what I had personally experienced. It was really neat to be a part of it. I would say
Yeah, I feel like you're talking about the Hidden Haven water pillar situation where,
that's one of that. That's just one of them.
yeah.
What was another one? There was another one that really stood out, and I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Oh, wait,
I'm gonna try to think of it.
to avoid spoilers, was it at the very, very, very end of the game at that one battle that you kept resetting? That you were,
Yes.
yeah. We won't
Yep.
spoil
Yep.
that, but yeah, yeah. Um, those are things where you're like, all right, I got through it. Let's see if they can get through it. Obviously, from you, it's the entertainment. Am I going to be looking at like a train crash or something? But
Hmm.
for me, it's that too. But also, it's all right. Well, if everyone's getting stuck on this, I need to tinker with some things, or
Right.
yeah, I want to make sure that the players are equipped with either enough knowledge from earlier in the game so that they've been scaffolded to like expect weird curveballs because that's what I'm
Right.
going for, or something else to kind of help along as opposed to like some sort of surprise that doesn't sit well or doesn't or is kind of rejected because it was inconsistent with their expectations. Like there's defying expectations in a positive way, and then there's defying expectations in a way that's like unsettling and kind of throws them off and like breaks them out of the game. So
Right.
it's trying to kind of thread that needle.
Yeah. And we were talking about Battle 12. I'll just say that. No spoilers, right? That was the number.
Yeah, it's Battle 12. They'll know, right? Yeah.
And I can't believe how long I spent on that battle, and then because again, I was going through at a faster rate than all the rest,
You-
and then when I'm watching somebody else's stream, they're getting through the battle on the first try, and I'm like punching myself in the face, like, how did I not figure? And I even said it on stream. I'm like, and I did this, like I put my hands in my head, and I'm like, Chris, you got me, and you got me good.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and again, that's another one of those moments that is going to stick with gamers, I'm sure.
yeah. And it's very interesting because there were definitely playtesters of different skill levels. Like I had people testing my game who didn't play any RPGs whatsoever. I had those who were very, seasoned veterans, and
Hmm.
I would certainly put you up with some of the gamers who are clearly well versed in the genre, and you kind of know how to navigate a lot of things better than most people, than the average gamer. Um, and so getting to trip you up was always fun too, as long as it wasn't in such a way that I knew every person would get tripped up. And so, all right, this is like unreasonable expectations on my part. So again, it's a matter of like, did I catch it every once in a while? Because that might be fair game, especially if other people are getting through that a little bit faster. Or is it something I need to take a second look at and reflect on? Because maybe I was just um, the specific bar for that specific puzzle or whatever was just simply too high.
Yeah. So let's start wrapping up here. Is there anything? What's next for you? Is there going to be maybe a sequel if you decide to do one, depending on the successful of the games, or you decide to make maybe another game that's completely different than Mango Mischief, or is this just basically, you know what, one and done, Mango Mischief, and I'm good. I've checked off the check mark on the proverbial bucket list.
Next for me is summer break, because my students are taking final exams in like a week or
Right.
two or three, and the reason why I'm releasing the game on June 20th, Monday, June 20th, is because that's when my summer break starts. Um, and so this summer will be mostly marketing and focusing on making sure Mango Mischief rolls out nicely. Um,
Mm,
as far as I'm aware right now, like I've checked off that box. I'm really proud and really happy with the way it's turned out. Um, who knows somewhere down the line if I end up making another game? I if I were, again, this is a conditional. If I were to ever hypothetically make another game, it would probably be related to Mango Mischief. Whether it's a
okay.
true sequel or maybe based in like the same type of universe, kind of like how Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross aren't like exactly sequels and prequels, but like they're kind of in the
Okay.
same overarching universe. Um, because I like the way Mango Mischief turned out, and I would be really surprised if I ended up making a second game that was completely different, that had nothing to do with all of that, because Mango Mischief really included everything I wanted in in the game. Like
Mm,
the four main characters, like I really liked the way they ended up coming to life with their personalities. Um, when I would come up with scenarios throughout the game and try to figure out like, all right, what should I write for Sprig or Marion or Mero or Iraq to make the dialogue interesting? Like it got to the point where I could just sit back and be like, well, what would Marion say? And just like write out what Marion would say. Like the characters were fleshed out enough for me as I was, spending the thousands of hours making the game.
mm,
That it was really just a matter of having them like, you know, having their dialogues be consistent with their personalities, although their personalities did develop a little bit over time. Um,
yep, they
so
did.
between the maps, between the storylines, um, between the class systems and everything, I would probably stick with the same spirit in terms of that. Um, that being said, like the past 2 years were kind of an ideal time for me to make this game because, I mean, with COVID and everything, I knew I wasn't going to be going out, and I was remote teaching for a while, so I didn't have to worry about commuting, so that saved some time. And now that I think we're moving slowly from like pandemic to endemic, where we're starting to live with COVID and seeing what that's like, um, I'll have probably less free time because again, still teaching full time, still tutoring part time. This is like my side passion project thing, which is nice.
Right.
Um, and hopefully, in a year or so, maybe my wife and I start thinking about having kids. We have three dogs and a cat, so it's
Mm,
it's been it's been tough juggling being a teacher, being a tutor, being a good supportive husband and pet lover and all of the other things. We bought a house halfway through the Mango Mischief process. So being a homeowner, um, so there's a lot of hats I've been wearing, and
Mm,
I don't mind not wearing the game developer hat for a little while. Um, but it was really really fun. So a lot of it'll probably end up depending on if if people end up buying the game, then I might have to look to see is there another game engine that's maybe a little bit more advanced, um, or whatever else I might want in a potential sequel, and then maybe tinker with that a few years from now. I have no idea.
gotcha. Yeah, I know all about multiple hats. I got three kids of my own.
Yeah.
I work full time for. I'm in the medical industry, and then I'm trying to do content creation via YouTube and Twitch. So it's definitely no pets though, not yet. I told my wife no pets, but then I'm pretty sure when my kids get a little bit older, they may want some, and I may have to cave. I don't know. We'll see. But uh, going on to that, your game may possibly open up new opportunities for you. You never know. Would you be willing, should the opportunity ever come, if another indie dev or somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I like the way you developed Mango Mischief, or I liked your writing in particular," because that's another thing that really stood out throughout your entire game was the writing behind it. If that ever became a possibility, I mean, if the circumstances are in your favor, is that something that you would pursue, possibly a career shift, or just continuing doing it on the side?
So as of like a month or two ago, people have already been asking me, which is kind of cool and very humbling. Like
Mm,
literally, like, what other projects are you working on? Would you have time to work on another one? Or like, hey, we want you to talk to a team or something. Um, I have no idea. I would never do a career shift. I love teaching. I
right,
mean, getting to develop and create a game and figure out how to lead the player to learn what this game is about and what the expectations are and whatnot. That was an educational process for me too. So like the scaffolding from when you see a puzzle or when you're thinking twice about something that seems innocuous, but based on your past experiences that something could go awry. Like there was definitely a really good outlet for education, or the education, yeah, as an educator, creating the game, and that was one of the parts I liked the most. I mean, I also really enjoyed
mhm,
the math behind it, balancing everything. I mean, math teaching is always going to be my main calling, my main vocation.
right,
If I somehow find myself with extra free time in the future, maybe I could work on a project or something. But I also really liked doing it solo because, again, I wanted it to be my game and my identity, and I didn't really want to have to worry about like compromising so much so that, um, you know, that it wasn't just my vision, but what was like the vision of like five other people or 10 other people. And also the learning experience of, you know, the the main advantage of being a solo developer seems to be that you get to create everything the way you want to create it, but that's
right.
exactly the
You don't have to answer
disadvantage.
to anybody.
Yeah, and the disadvantage is exactly that. Like, all right, well, if there's a problem, like you have to figure it out. It's on you. So whether it's
Mhm,
you know um, the animations or the balancing or the story or whatever, um, you've got to figure that out. And so I enjoy that process. I'm not sure if I'd enjoy it so much in a team aspect where I wasn't quite as passionate about the project because it's not my own. Um, but I have no idea. Certainly, people have been like sending me messages and asking for like tips, like how do you balance game development with like other real life obligations, and they'd ask me questions about RPG Maker stuff. Not that I'm an expert in any of this, and I kind of preface
right,
all of my conversations with that. But they just like to see the insights, whether it's like, oh, like you have a decent following on social media, or you ran a successful Kickstarter campaign. Like, how did you do that? And I looked at a bunch of other successful Kickstarter campaigns and emulated them. Like, that was it. I just learned from, I guess it'd be what, standing on the shoulders of giants, where I just saw people do it really, really, really well, and then mixed that with other people who did it really, really, really well, and I came up with my own thing. Um, it'd be cool to work with some other individuals on stuff, but I'm less interested in that as I am as a math teacher.
I see. All right. Before we wrap up here, I just want to go over something real quick. Like you're basically you're calling. You're an educator. You're a teacher. Like that's your why. My why. I've always been someone who likes to help people out. It just it's been like a natural part of my life. And a lot of times when I'm driving, I do a lot of driving for work, so I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of TED talks and such. One such person, I don't know if you've heard of him, Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Um, right.
You
So
post his quotes on Twitter and stuff. Yeah.
yes, yeah, I've been sharing a lot of his quotes lately because a lot of it applies to not just business, which I'm trying to get a little bit more involved in business besides content creation of my job, but I want to get a little bit more into the business aspect of things. So, but anyway, um, I listened to his one TED talk about find your why. What is your purpose? And my purpose was always to help people, but I also my passion has always been like game related. So last year around March time, I'm like, you know what, it's time to start doing something a little bit more creative and something that I like to do. And that's when I started doing some streaming, started doing a little bit of content creation on YouTube. And then you would come along and said, hey, would you like to test my game out? And here we are full circle now. Basically what I want to say is you giving me the opportunity to test your game has basically been a catalyst for me discovering how and the direction that I would like to take my um you could call it, I don't know if you could really call it a career just yet. I mean, I just do it on the side right now, but it has been a catalyst for the direction, I will say, the direction that I want to take my Twitch channel and my YouTube channel, because there's a lot of big creators out there. They all do the AAA games. It's like everybody's playing Fortnite, everybody's playing Call of Duty and this and that. And it's like there are so many great indie devs out there and so many great indie games. And me being a person that likes to help out, it just fit perfectly together. So thank you, Chris, for helping me discover my purpose in my direction in this vast world of content creation.
You're welcome. I'm glad. Yeah, no, I mean that's awesome. It is. I also watch your other stuff besides just Mango Mischief stuff too. I
Mhm.
watch your, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder Revenge conversations. You have so many like super popular videos. Just like you seem to be like on the cutting edge of hitting those instant updates on like those niche games that you love, whether it's the fighting
Yeah.
games or the Shredder's Revenge or whatever. You're just keeping
Mhm.
a community up to date on stuff.
Yeah.
And so whether it's I'm sure you're still continuing to balance that as well as the other content creation of streaming. And I
Mhm.
hope other people, other game devs get lucky enough to find a way to, I don't know, get on your schedule in terms of you getting to check out their stuff too, because you gave incredibly useful feedback. And and then to not to attempt to one up you, but you helped me continue learning, so I appreciate that too. Because as an educator, as a teacher, you never stop being a student, and so
That's
uh,
right.
getting all that information from you and from everyone else um, made me made my game way better than it could have otherwise been. So I appreciate you helping me kind of complete my passion project and making me even prouder of it than if I had just done it alone.
Not a problem. It was my pleasure to help out. So that'll do it for this interview today. Plug in your social media and let us know again. I know you've mentioned it a few times, but let us know your social media and when where we can reach you and when the game is going to be released.
Yeah, Mango Mischief drops on Steam on June 20th of this year, 2022. It'll just be $10 for a 20, 30, 40, however long hour JRPG experience. Again, it's a retro style. You got your old like 816-bit graphics with a heavy amount of satire, comedy, fourth wall breaks, puzzles, puns, really bad jokes. Um,
Yeah, a lot of
really,
and they're funny too. Some of those bad jokes, it's like it's bad, but it's good.
yeah. And yeah, and those are the jokes I love doing. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so social media. Well, I have a YouTube now where I'm uploading videos either every other day or around
Hmm.
there for the foreseeable future, certainly throughout the summer. Twitter, Mango is at Mango Mischief. Instagram is at Mango Mischief Video Game. There's also mangomischief.com because I made a website like way before I was going to make a Steam account. So yeah, you can hit me up on any of those. And I think that is pretty much it.
Excellent. Well, Chris, thank you for doing this interview. It has been a pleasure to talk with you one on one. I know we've talked a lot on stream, but it was really good to have this quasi face to face.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Anytime.
All right. Thanks again, Chris.
See.